Firstly, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming along today. I was having a look at the list just before this meeting to see the type of people coming along, and it's a lot of experience and expertise. And so I'd be really interested to hear what everyone has to say about this committee and trying to solve and improve WSUD compliance across Australia. Before I get started, I would just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we are all on today and the continuous connection to land and sea. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I did send out an agenda before this meeting just to kind of give people a bit of an idea about what's going to be talked about today. And so I'm going to try and stick to this. Just gave people a few minutes to kind of sign up, which is still happening at the moment, but then going into acknowledgement of country, and I'm about to talk through some logistics of how this meeting is going to operate. Then talking about conflicts of interest for a little bit before we get into talking about the National WSUD Compliance Committee, then having a bit of an opportunity for people to provide a bit of a feedback and comments and questions on the committee. Then I'll do a bit of a talk about the WSUD Maintenance Compliance Framework to show people kind of what that's about, but also to show people the opportunities in future meetings where people can talk about projects or work that they're doing as well in this space. That will be followed up with another section of Q&A where people can ask questions and raise comments and feedback there. We'll wrap up with a bit of a meeting poll just to ask some basic questions to help improve this meeting going forward. And then, just kind of wrapping up with a final few comments, and that will be the end of the meeting. I guess just to get started, the logistics. So due to the number of people that have registered for today, we've gone for the approach of turning off cameras and audios of everyone attending, just to kind of manage it a bit better. But you can drop comments and questions you have in the Q&A section, and then I'll go through those in the Q&A moments of the meeting. You can also raise your hand and we can give you permission to speak, so you can share your audio to talk. However, if you just raise your hand and wait to be given permission to speak, then we can hear what you have to say. I'd also just say about being respectful of everyone's opinions, ideas, and time. Everyone's got different experiences in this field, so everyone's going to have different opinions and ideas, and sometimes the weirdest or strangest or smallest ideas could really solve things. So I want this to be kind of a safe space that people can share things that they're doing, and no matter how weird or strange or small it might seem. Also, in terms of being respectful of everyone's time, I'll be sticking to the agenda time just so that people can get out at 3:30 today, because I do know a lot of people here might need to leave a little early or have other things on after this. And just trying to keep everything to the purpose of this meeting and not going onto tangents and all of that. In terms of registrants, I was just keen to show people the type of people that have registered for today, just to show the diverse nature of the group interested in improving WSUD compliance on a national scale. So you've got councils, you've got consultants, you've got manufacturers, you've got a whole bunch of government organizations here today or have registered for today. So really keen to hear the diverse opinions and thoughts and feedback on what's going to be talked about. Now, with the fact of having such a diverse group of people, there is going to be rise of conflicts of interest. And so I just wanted to start off by acknowledging that Ocean Protect do have a conflict of interest in relation to the topic of solving WSUD maintenance, noting we supply, install, and maintain WSUD assets. So as an Ocean Protect employee, that does apply to me. I just wanted to raise that up front to be transparent. I would also acknowledge that there are others that will attend these meetings with conflicts of interest in relation to solving WSUD compliance, and to kind of help manage that. If people are submitting questions or comments in the Q&A, it would be helpful if you just kind of say your name and what organization you're from, just to kind of give those comments and feedback a little bit more context for everyone. Now, before we get started, it would just be interesting to hear if people have any initial comments about this meeting. Is there things that they're interested in talking about today, hearing about today, or maybe at a future meeting? Because I've set this meeting up in a way that I think would be relevant for everyone, but I'd be interested in hearing what others have to say. So whether you drop that in the chat or the Q&A, I could maybe have a quick look at that. Otherwise, there are going to be opportunities throughout the meeting to provide feedback and comments and all of that. But I think maybe best I'll send an email after today and get thoughts that way. But feel free to send comments throughout. I know some people have to leave early or would be interested in more information after today, so you can contact me via email, phone, or connect with me via LinkedIn. We also do now have a website live for WSUD Compliance, so wsudcompliance.com.au. You can check out the website by scanning that QR code. At the moment, it is just a bit of a landing page with some information. However, with time, the goal is to have more information and resources there. And so on there, I'm hoping to have the recordings from these meetings and more about these meetings going forward. Now, just a little context about me for the people that haven't met me or don't know anything about me. I started my career off at Blacktown City Council in the WSUD compliance team. I was the WSUD Compliance Support Officer and supported Russell Cadman, Ben Benaluric, and Dr. Andrew Thomas. And then I became the WSUD Compliance Officer myself. In that time, I was looking at redeveloping Blacktown's WSUD compliance program, which looks at enforcing legal maintenance requirements on private WSUD assets. Since then, at the start of this year, I've joined Ocean Protect as their WSUD specialist with a focus on WSUD maintenance compliance, helping councils with that. But with time, I hope that scope kind of expands to other forms of compliance in other areas of WSUD as well. So about the National WSUD Compliance Committee. So I'm just going to do a quick talk about this before we kind of get into some Q&A if people have any questions or thoughts about it. So feel free to drop the questions and feedback in there, and I'll get to them at the end of the section. So firstly, I just want to talk a bit about the purpose of this committee. The idea behind this was to create a platform for discussions and collaboration between people, to share information, resources, ideas, to get feedback on projects and work that people are doing. With the ultimate goal is to improve WSUD compliance. There's a lot of issues in terms of compliance throughout the life cycle of a WSUD asset. And so I think bringing industry stakeholders together, bringing experts and people involved in this space together, is a really important thing to do for the work that I'm doing, but also for all the work that you're doing. And so due to the fact that it is a large challenge and a large thing to look at, I think for the committee, it would make sense to kind of be a bit more strategic and look at different life cycle stages at a time. So initially, I do think a bit of a more focus on WSUD maintenance compliance with a long-term focus looking at the other types of compliance as well. That doesn't mean that initially we can't be talking about design and construction and the other forms of compliance, but initially just have a bit of a talk about WSUD maintenance and change with time. Now about the committee. So the idea for this is to have regular online meetings to discuss and work together on WSUD compliance. How regular that is can be up for discussion. There will be a little poll at the end where people can provide their thoughts on how regular these meetings should be. I was thinking maybe a monthly or bi-monthly meeting. The goal is to make this a little bit different to other committees, groups, etc., where people can come along and participate how they want, and there's no financial commitments or anything from organizations and individuals to join. If we were to do a monthly meeting, it would maybe be a 90-minute commitment a month, maybe it'd be a bit less. Again, if you can't attend some meetings, that's also okay. Just kind of get involved in a way that works for you. I wanted to remove those barriers. And so, financial and also time commitments can be barriers for some to attend these meetings. And the idea really is in removing those barriers and just bringing everyone together is to solve issues for stakeholders with stakeholders. I think there's a lot of projects happening in the industry right now that could benefit from getting feedback from stakeholders. And so by providing this platform, it can really help solve and improve that process. It also will help make projects in the industry more accountable, transparent, and relevant. In terms of the project I'm doing, the WSUD Maintenance Compliance Framework, it will make it more accountable and transparent by the fact that people at these meetings can question my decisions and actions I'm making on that project. Well, it also makes it more relevant by getting the input and feedback from the industry stakeholders that are attending today and at future meetings. Now, for the future of the committee, I'm looking to have a bit more of a formalized setup. It would be great having a chair and all of that in place to make this, more formalized. I'd love to hear about other projects and work happening in this space. So if people are interested in talking about a particular project or work that they're doing or a challenge they're facing, I'd be happy to hear from you, and we can look to incorporate you into a future meeting if it's appropriate. I also recognize the perception issue around Ocean Protect leading a National WSUD Compliance Committee meeting. And so hopefully we would love for someone else to take ownership of this at some point. We're getting this established and set up. However, with time, we do hope that someone appropriate can take ownership and take control and look after this committee going forward, because we see this as something important for the industry. I would also question whether this should be called a committee. Is it just a meeting? Is it a workshop? Is it a task force? There's all sorts of different names that this could be called. And at the poll at the end of this meeting, there will be another question raised about trying to figure out what you think this should be called. I'd also be interested in setting up like timeframes and deliverables. So are there certain things that this committee or group should be working on together or individually, and just kind of coming up with timeframes for that. And then before we get into questions, I know this is one that people might have about the committee, which is why is Ocean Protect doing this? And so for the work that I was doing, I was needing to get industry feedback and input, but I also think for a lot of other projects and work being done in this space, it's important. And the reality is no one else was doing this. There was no real National WSUD Compliance Committee out there or something like that, that I could find that where people could share ideas and work together on the issue. And for Ocean Protect, our whole mission is about protecting our waterways and oceans. So we see improving WSUD compliance as a way to help do that. And so we thought we'd stand up, get this established, again, with the hope that one day someone else can take ownership and lead this as the way the industry needs. And so now just into discussion and questions. So if anyone has any questions, they can drop it in the Q&A. You can also raise your hand if you have something you'd like to say, I guess, more verbally. And I might just get Brad to come back to kind of facilitate the Q&A with me.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I noticed there's a couple of comments coming through. Mazib Rahman and Mazib's from Marybeck City Council. They just make the comment that a 90-minute meeting in a month could be too much of a commitment. Maybe bi-monthly might be a better option. Christy Good, so thanks, Mazib. Christy Good also says Blacktown City Council has been working in this space for a while now and has to date been leading this work. So yeah, certainly pay respects and big thanks to the Blacktown City Council legends for all their work in this space. Michelle Blewett, I think she says agreed. I think that's an agreement from Mazib's comments. If anyone would like to verbalize a question or a comment, just put your hand up and we can. I can unmute you. Alan Walker, hey Alan, supporting a bi-monthly session irrespective of the title. So bi-monthly is seemingly
that makes
popular
sense.
choice.
Christy I'll allow Christy to speak. Christy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. Look, I just wanted to flag that. So thanks, Brad, for pointing that out. But yeah, this is not something new to Blacktown Council. Like, we have had a number of really dedicated people working on this issue, and we have been chipping away at finding solutions for the last at least 5-6 years now. So it would be great to, I guess, build on the work, not reinvent the wheel of things that we have tried, haven't tried. We'd love to hear any other organisation that has also been working in this space, because to date we we're not aware of any of those people or organisations. But yeah, just to I guess emphasise to build on the work that has already been done to date, because we're not starting from baseline.
Yeah, because like I was involved with that program for a few years and understand the work that's been done in there, and so I think the industry can learn a lot from the program that Kate Murphy is now leading at Blacktown for that work. And I really do agree that we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. And that was part of the reason to start this committee, so that we could hear from other people, hear from Blacktown and their lessons and their thoughts on this and sharing their ideas, but then also hearing from the other councils out there that hear what the struggles are, like why are they struggling to do this sort of work, because that's what I'm hoping this framework I'm working on can solve. But also this committee could help solve a lot of issues by bringing everyone together and trying to bring everyone together, so we're not reinventing the wheel is what I'm trying to say.
And you mentioned Kate Murphy from Blacktown City Council, and Kate actually asked a couple of questions. And Kate, I'll just read it out. Kate says, I'm keen to hear from other councils and their experience in managing WSUD compliance management. What are your challenges? So if anyone, obviously to Daniel's point at the start, there's a lot of councils that are dialed in today. If they have some experiences or challenges that they'd like to share, now you're welcome to do so. Alternatively, you can obviously just hang back and wait for the next committee meeting, if it is called a committee. Kate also says that she's also keen to hear from contractors / property managers on their experiences in meeting WSUD maintenance and compliance management.
I think hopefully there are people on this meeting that would be interested to share their thoughts on their experience with this. Again, as Brad said, this can be something that's discussed at future meetings. But I think this committee can really help bring those ideas and thoughts back. Ben's made a comment. Yeah,
there's been a couple of comments. So, and thanks for everyone who's chiming in. Alan Walker, all the way from, I think, Kingsborough Council in Tasmania. So it's the powers of the webinar reaching everyone from Queensland to Tasmania so far. I'll be keen to see who's the furthest away. Let us know. Alan says, WSUD design and construction is still a bit wobbly. Maintenance is critical, yet funding adequately is the issue. Ben Peneleric, greetings, Ben, from B2 Design Lab and Griffith University. Ben says staff turnover in the Blacktown example, a champion leaving resulted in a resourcing issue, which meant a newly developed program couldn't be properly implemented. The champions, this is Ben saying this, the champions being myself, i.e. Ben and Daniel, and Andrew, LOL. Usman also asks, what type of deliverable are we planning to focus on? That's probably a good segue to the next section. I think we might talk about deliverables in a little bit later on.
If anyone else, I guess just comment on Ben's thing, like, wait, we can go to the next one.
There's another one from Saram. I'll read it out. A good initiative, keen to move forward with this type of committee going into the future. It's an asset that gets overlooked, specifically in subdivisions due to poor management of hold points and lack of education around the asset. Keen to work together with the group to better educate the nation about it. Michelle, there's a lot of comments through. We might have to.
We still have a little more time.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to take over the. Michelle says, I'm working with 6 Southern Tasmanian councils on WSUD maintenance. It's really hard. All the councils need business cases for budgeting adequate money. Alan Walker says, consistency across the states is also important. Legislation differs. Have seen the same developer operating in different states applying different approaches, which is disappointing.
So I think in terms of those comments, I would say like with the framework, which I'm about to get into, can kind of answer a lot of these things about funding and differences between states and legislation. So I might leave that.
Another comment from we're hearing from councils a fair bit now. So and Nosheen from City of Casey, the challenge we face related to compliance is related to having enough resources / funding to undertake the compliance checks. Lack of knowledge among council officers. Another one from Michelle. I think Michelle Blewett from
From
Osmat.
Osmat.
Greeting, Michelle. Michelle says, need to ensure microplastic capture is included in any design and assessment. 100%.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think, yeah, if there's no other questions at the moment, it might be good to move on, just because I think a lot of the things I'm about to say about the framework will help answer this.
Cool. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, so I'll move on to the next section. Cool. So next. Before we get any further, I guess I do just want to talk a little, define two things just so that people understand what I'm talking about. When I talk about a WSUD maintenance compliance program, I'm talking about a program that is looking at enforcing legal maintenance requirements on private WSUD assets and or improving management of public WSUD assets. So I'm hoping this is something that can help improve management of private and public assets, not just one or the other, because I do think that is something that needs to be looked at to not just one space. In terms of WSUD assets, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about things that are looking at water quality, water conservation, flood mitigation. So things like gross pollutant traps, rainwater tanks, and on-site stormwater detention systems. So now getting into the WSUD Maintenance Compliance Framework. Again, drop comments or drop things in the Q&A section, and I'll answer them at the end. I think some of the questions already raised will be kind of answered in this, hopefully. So in terms of the WSUD Maintenance Compliance Framework, the idea is that I understand that councils are struggling with this work. There's a lot of reasons why it's not working, but what I'm hoping to do is develop a package of resources to help councils implement and operate a WSUD maintenance compliance program, essentially providing the building blocks to councils to build their own compliance program, which should help with kind of resourcing and capacity issues, because rather than spending all that time and money to develop these resources and figure these things out, the idea is to provide those to councils, and then councils can use that in a way that works for them. So councils could use just one of the building blocks, or they could use all of them, and they could use them in a way that works for them, not the way that I propose with the framework. The challenge with such a project is that I'm trying to create something that is relevant for across Australia. Now, if I was working with one or two organizations, it's a bit different because I understand the context. However, with all the differences between councils and states, it really does make this a challenging project, but it is something that needs to be solved. And so that is why I'm starting this project. Now, what's contained in this framework is going to evolve with time as more councils ask for certain things or provide feedback and thoughts on their experience in terms of this space. It can help evolve what's included. But initially, what I'd like to include in this is implementation and operation instructions, looking at how to implement and operate a compliance program, legal material to help build a legal foundation for the program, education engagement material to educate and engage with the stakeholders, some foundations for a compliance management system, and more. As I was saying, with time, this list will grow and these items will grow and evolve as well. Now, in terms of the implementation and operation instructions, I think for council to understand what they need to do, instructions are needed. The challenge is that each council is going to be different, each state's going to be different. But what I'm hoping to do is provide kind of step-by-step instructions on the process to do both implementation and operation. Again, with the differences between councils, sometimes councils might be able to follow step-by-step. Others might have to rearrange the steps a bit or add a step or remove certain steps. But it should really help provide clarity on what's needed to happen, what will be happening, and then also provide a bit of a starting point to help kind of save some time and money so councils don't have to start from scratch like Christy was talking about before. In terms of the legal situation, I'm looking to provide some legal material just because there's a lot of questions in this space that are unanswered or people don't understand, such as, is it illegal not to maintain WSUD assets? What allows the council to require private property to do maintenance? What allows the council to inspect a private WSUD asset? What are the legal consequences of not doing maintenance? And many other questions. So I'm hoping with this legal material that it will answer those questions, but provide tools such as a suite of conditions of consent and other things that will help require maintenance and allow inspections of private WSUD assets. Again, the challenge is there are differences in legislation across Australia, but it provides that starting point by being like, this is what you could potentially use at your organisation. You would then have the council review this internally or externally with a lawyer to make sure it is relevant. But hopefully that does provide the opportunity to save some time and money by not having to start from scratch. The next component of the framework is the education engagement material. The reality is, I guess, yeah, a lot of people don't understand or are aware of stormwater and WSUD. In the industry we are, but the general public, the asset owners, sometimes maintenance contractors and council staff don't fully understand how to implement it, how to use it, what it is. And so with that being the case, there isn't the demand needed for better practice, for best practice stormwater management. And so hopefully by educating and engaging with a range of stakeholders, we can build that demand and case study, well, the grounds and evidence needed to get the appropriate funding and capacity within your organization to do a WSUD maintenance compliance program. So who needs to be educated? There are a lot of people that could be educated and engaged with in this space, but some important stakeholders are the community. So helping them understand this, I guess, invisible infrastructure that they don't understand and don't see on the, or in most cases, because most of it is hidden underground. And so by building their awareness and understanding and appreciation for that, that could help build a bit more demand for councils to put more funding towards this, or even getting more funding from state or federal level, hopefully. In terms of educating, engaging with asset owners, it's important if we're wanting to see maintenance compliance occur, we need asset owners to understand the topic, their responsibilities, and how to carry that out. We can't expect someone to maintain a WSUD system if they don't understand what WSUD is, what stormwater is, what they need to do, why they need to do it, and how they need to do it. Council staff can also be educated and engaged with, so helping them understand the topic, their responsibilities. An issue that I hear about is how, yeah, there's just so many different teams within a council and they just think it's someone else's responsibility. So kind of defining and identifying who's responsible for what would be important. Looking at benefits and implementation can really help improve the implementation and management of WSUD assets on private and public property. Also, maintenance contractors need to be engaged with as well. They're the ones carrying out the maintenance, and pretty sure there was a comment about how, yeah, each council and state are doing things differently. So if we can help kind of educate and engage with these people, they then know what councils are expecting, because it may vary from LGA to LGA. Now, people could be educated and engaged with a wide variety of ways. Some people are visual learners, some people need to have it spoken to them or something read, so fact sheets, videos, web pages, guidelines, training, social media events, but also meetings and phone calls, and a whole range of other ways could be used to educate and engage with people. In terms of what I'm going to be looking to do is to provide some templates and ready-to-use material that will evolve and change with time. So I'll look to develop some fact sheets, some letters, stuff like that, that councils can take and modify how they need. So they can just take some pictures out of it, information, chuck the logo, whatever it looks like. So that's kind of the hope with this material, so that councils can save time and money on developing material that they can use to engage with their stakeholders. Another important component to this framework is, well, to a WSUD maintenance compliance program, is a compliance management system. This is a system that will help manage compliance on the asset and property level. Now, this might be called different things for different organizations. It might be an asset management system, a property management system, or some other sort of name. But basically, some sort of system needs to be in place to help manage compliance so that people understand what's happening in terms of the program. Now, the challenge with this was that councils have already spent so much time and money implementing the systems, Ascetic, Deck One, or whatever you end up using. So I didn't want to go and be like, here's a system you have to use, forget about everything else, spend more time, spend more money on this. So the solution in my eyes was to create a bit of a mock-up system that would be usable for the short term, so that councils can kind of see what's needed, but then the recommendation would be to modify the current established system or see how they could integrate such a system into their established system, because there's no point, recreating the wheel. And with that, to kind of help provide process maps and guidance so that it can speed up the process and understanding if you were to work with your internal council IT staff. So rather than telling you what to do, this is more suggestion of what system you could use for this. Now, the pathway forward for the framework is I'm going to continue to do webinars, talks at events such as conferences, doing meetings with council. So I'm open to have one-on-ones with councils if people are interested, having a chat about your experience and situation and seeing what your thoughts are on the framework, but also seeing what I could do to help you. Hopefully have more committee meetings going forward based off initial feedback. It sounds like bi-monthly is a better option. In terms of launching, I do hope that by March 2024, there can be some sort of material ready. It might not be everything, but I'd like to start providing some of the material from this framework so that the industry can start playing around with it and understanding it. And then as we go forward with more experience and thoughts from people, there will be a continual evolution of the framework. As more people interact with it, use it, and new technology arises, there will be opportunities to improve this framework as needed. And so now we're back to a Q&A section. So I'll get Brad to come back to facilitate Q&A with me. But just drop any comments or questions you have in the Q&A. And again, you can raise your hand if you're wanting to say something more verbally.
Yeah, look, thanks, Daniel. And just a reminder, if you do have comments or questions, it's probably easier to manage them if you put them in the Q&A panel. But I'll do my best to go through the ones that have come through. And apologies in advance if I've missed anyone. There was a question or comment from Alan Walker around, I think you might have touched on this briefly, around, is it better to start with legislative approaches or educational advice to start with? I'm not sure if you want to comment on that one or just go through to the next one.
Which one are we?
It was there's a comment in the chat from Alan Walker around, do we want to start, commence with legislation approaches, or do we need to better educate to start with?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to vary from council to council how they want to approach this. I do think Stormwater New South Wales does have their guidelines on maintenance, and that can help with the figuring out how maintenance should be happening on properties and more on assets. But I do think, looking at legislation and policy and stuff could help improve this. As this framework gets developed, this is going to be figured out. So at the moment, I probably can't really say too much, but
that's okay. That's good. A question or comment from Nosheen Abaid again. They say a business case supporting the program could help with rolling this program out at their council from City of Casey. They say it is very difficult to find additional operational budget within council in a current situation.
I agree with that. I think what I would hope to do with this framework is to get some councils to test it out, so that other councils can have those case studies in place, because I understand that's an important thing that councils will need to get the approvals from above to implement it. So if there are councils interested in this, I'm happy to have that chat to do that. Otherwise, I agree, evidence is needed.
A lot of questions and comments around budget. Alan Walker says, he said, literally this morning, I sent an email to directors and general management about budgeting adequate funds for maintenance of stormwater control devices. They also say, Alan says that if the approach was similar to the IPWEA asset management system, it might gain more traction. I'm not sure if you want to comment on that one at all. Otherwise, I'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of budgeting and that sort of financing side of things, my goal is to make this program as kind of cost effective as possible, so that, because I understand how the limited budgets councils are facing. I had that experience at Blacktown, and I'm sure that's going to be similar across all councils. So I'm hoping that can kind of help with budgeting a bit. I hadn't heard about the IPWEA asset management system, so I'll have a bit of a look into that and see if that's relevant to what I'm trying to do. I also do see the comment about March might be ambitious with bi-monthly meetings. What about June 2024? Again, I don't expect all the materials to be ready by then, but I'm hoping by then I could have some of the education and engagement material ready, maybe have a bit of feedback or input about the legal material, whether the instructions and the compliance management system stuff would be ready by then might not be the case. But yeah, March to June, I think, is hopefully having something ready. Not everything, but some stuff. Yeah.
Go hard or go home, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm gonna try and see what I can do in the next 6 months.
Remember, it's not just you though. Obviously, this is the benefit of having this collective audience. Like you've got 150 something registrations. I think I can see 80 people are attending this live. There's a lot of collective experience and passion. So look, I think it's on us all to actually collectively work together and try to help improve the situation, because I think we all recognize it's an area of, that we can, it's low hanging fruit. We can make a significant improvement. But yeah, it does take work, and one of the things it does take is money. And a couple of people have asked about where's the funding come from. If I go to one of the questions, sorry, and similar question to Rob Catchlove. This is from Mazib Rahman. They say the framework might involve a lot of work. It will involve a lot of work. How are you planning to get the work funded? The extent of the work varies from best practice to policy appreciation and industry acceptance and communication. And similarly, Rob Catchlove asks, are you self-funding this whole project, or have you got a grant or contract from a client or government body to do this work?
So going to the first one from Mazir, yeah, implementing a compliance program is going to be a lot of work. The whole idea of this framework is to make that less work for organizations, rather than councils with tight budgets, limited capacity working on this. I'm going to be working on developing these resources and information on how to do all this so that you can just take it, and yes, it will require some funding, it will require some capacity, but it should be a lot less than what it would need to be if you did it yourself. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that's kind of the thing. It will be kind of about reducing the workload to make it easier. I understand some councils still might not be able to do it, but the idea is to really make it less work, and then hopefully that can lead to potential funding opportunities from state or federal government. I haven't gone down that avenue with this yet, but who knows where things could lead.
But it's, I guess in terms of developing this body.
Oh yeah, in terms of, yeah, for Rob's question. So at the moment, it's just Ocean Protect funding me. They hired me at the start of this year to do this project. In terms of, so it's being funded by Ocean Protect. Again, recognizing the conflict of interest, we do have a benefit long-term from this, but so does the rest of the industry. And so that's why Ocean Protect was willing to do this. In terms of, yeah, I hope that there would be grants or other opportunities for councils to implement this going forward. I do know, yeah, the Parramatta River Catchment Group got something recently, so that's an opportunity, but hopefully state and federal government can provide those funding opportunities to fund it at, yeah, for our councils.
I think one of the benefits of the committee is, and I've heard this, a couple of people have said this, and this is from Emerald Cuthbertson from Northern Beaches Council. They say Northern Beaches Council is really trying to improve the way we design, build and manage WSUD. Keen to hear what other councils are, keen to hear how other councils are managing their WSUD. How is their WSUD team set up? Do they have a specialised contractor who maintains the WSUD devices, or train people within the council maintenance team? I think the best thing about this committee potentially might be just sharing experiences and knowledge, as opposed to, I guess, each of us sort of trying to solve the problem in parallel to each other. So I'm just kind of charged through some of these questions because there's a lot coming through, and again, apologies if I'm missing any. Christy Good says Stormwater New South Wales has an upcoming workshop on sustainable funding options for stormwater management. People might be interested in this. Yeah, look, I think to your point around education versus or instead of or in addition to legislation, Laith Almol says, to legislate, you need more robust / practical conditions. The primary responsibility lies with the design engineer. Having good design engineers is key to future success of the WSUD systems. This would require education and training. Yeah, totally agree. David Paisley Top says, has anyone had experience in extended warranty periods and or bonds over and above the 12-month standard? Did you want to comment on that, Daniel? Because I suspect you have.
No, not really. I haven't. Well, my time was more looking at private assets, so I don't have experience with the public side of things, which I assume this is. Oh no, this would be private. I don't know.
Could be private
Could be
as
both.
well.
Yeah, like I don't really have experience with that. I was more involved once operational side of things happened. But yeah, if anyone else has experience with that, that would be good to share in the Q&A.
I can talk to it. Yeah, look,
Yeah.
I know amongst other budget councils require 5 to 10 year and sometimes 25-year maintenance contracts to be signed as part of a development approval condition. That's the case in various Southeast Queensland councils as well. Lockie, I see you've got your hand up. Sorry, I'm just going to allow you to talk, which could be a mistake, because I know Lachlan Shackloff, Bertinetti can talk underwater. Can you just need to unmute yourself, Lockie? Did you want to comment or on that? I think it was.
Yeah, if that's working, I think that's working.
Yep.
So
I
Lachlan
just
from
comment.
Ocean Protect, just to clarify.
Yes, Lachlan from Ocean Protect.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's correct. All I was going to comment about in terms of longer periods, yes, there's a number of different council authorities that have stipulations for ongoing maintenance as part of the DCP, and particularly specific DA conditions, both in, say, New South Wales and outside of New South Wales. From an Ocean Protect perspective as well, we do engage with some developers on longer term maintenance contracts, sometimes upwards to 25 years as well. So in terms of those longer term configurations, there is experience in the industry for that, particularly around stormwater maintenance. And it is something that exists. And I suppose to the point of it being a disincentive towards development, it's not necessarily the case, as it hasn't hindered development in a lot of the areas with those sort of requirements exist, at least in my experience.
Yeah, look, and it's comment from Saram Jega Thizaswaran from Casey Council. Greetings, and that they're keen to know more about these 25-year maintenance agreements, Lockie. So it might be worthwhile Saram talking further with Lockie or myself. I'll contact you offline, Saram, about that one. Alan Walker says Townsville Council had extended periods for non-structural measures. So there's precedence all over this joint. Alan Walker also asks, does this idea complement Murray Powell's maintenance manual? I believe he's referring to Stormwater New South Wales's maintenance guidelines for assets. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
Daniel?
So in my mind, I did the training last year, so I'm across this manual. And so in terms of this, I see what Murray did, what Stormwater New South Wales did with that guideline is outline how maintenance should be happening on the proprietary assets. And so this framework, yes, will be referring to those guidelines as the industry kind of benchmark at the moment for a maintenance guideline. However, this framework is looking more at setting up the processes internally to improve management of, or ensuring that assets are being maintained. So that guidelines outlines how to do the maintenance, while this framework looks at more about making sure that that maintenance is occurring. So I do think it would complement what Murray's done with that guideline.
100%. Comment from Ashley Jarvis from Redland City Council. They say, Ashley says, we have full-time contractors working on all of our 800 plus stormwater quality improvement devices that are ever growing, and is a highly key and important part of our organisation. So, Redland City Council, one example of hiring full-time contractors to look after their 800 plus squids. Steve Young, greetings, Steve, from Arup, says, I see an issue with councils getting funding budgets without the legislation to support it. Why? Based on what we have now, thoughts?
Yeah, so part of what I'd like to do with the legal material for this is to understand the legal situation, because there could be something in place right now that could help provide that legislation to support it. If it doesn't, then it also provides the opportunity for stormwater associations or this committee or others to push for the appropriate legislation to be put in place, because I do think that legislation needs to be in place to do it. I'm going to try and see if I can find if anything does exist. And if it doesn't, then look at what could be put in place to do that. If anyone has experience with the legislation in this space, I'd be interested in having a chat, whether that's now or after today's meeting would be a good opportunity for me.
Cool. And obviously, we've done a webinar previously around the legislation, whether it's illegal to not maintain stormwater treatment assets. From my bush lawyer perspective, it is illegal to not maintain stormwater treatment assets, particularly in New South Wales and Victoria. It's clear. And in Queensland, it's certainly illegal in relation to public infrastructure as well. But again, to your point, Daniel, keen to hear from others. Am I going over time?
No, we're ahead of time by quite a bit.
Okay, great. David Guo, sorry, David, says, is proprietary product maintenance included in the scope of this framework?
I'm not too sure what that.
So it's basically is ensuring the maintenance of proprietary stormwater treatment assets included as part of this framework.
Yeah, so the idea would be that this framework looks at all property types, all asset types, whether that's proprietary or non-proprietary. So yeah, I would say that would be included.
Cool. Aaron Wright. Greetings, Aaron, from... Now, where is Aaron now? I think is it New South Wales EPA? Apologies if I got that completely wrong, Aaron. Aaron says, it would be excellent if there was some evidence-based support to inform strategic decision-making on the timing and scale of maintenance activities required for the range of different WSUD devices. For example, carrying out maintenance when it is evident a device is no longer effective at achieving positive environmental outcomes is in receiving waterways. There has been examples of large-scale maintenance occurring, e.g. vegetation removal from a constructed wetland when the device was still functioning effectively. That is not money or time well spent.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I can provide a comment. So yeah, I think there does need to be a bit more strategic about it because there is such limited capacity and funding to do maintenance work, and it's a waste of money or time to be maintaining things that don't need maintenance. So with that being the case, yeah, I'll be pushing for you doing the inspections and audits to figure out if maintenance is required, not just scheduling, I'll maintain the gross pollutant trap every 3 months, but doing it more on an inspection auditing basis rather than just maintaining for maintenance sake.
Yep. And correction, Aaron Wright is from New South Wales DPE. Thank you, Aaron. A question around just spreading of information, okay, you can develop this package or this framework of resources, et cetera. How will the industry, including developers, find out about this sort of stuff?
Yeah, so thanks, Miha, for the question. With that, I'm hoping to find different avenues of presenting this framework to the industry. So looking at developers, looking at council, looking at contractors, looking at everyone, again, looking at developing those different types of education engagement material, which councils can be using, but also I can be using to work with people. So presenting at events, going to developer events, going to different companies and talking with them and figuring out what they're doing. So trying to meet with everyone and understand their issues and doing more webinars and trying to target that towards those sorts of specific audiences, so that there is those opportunities to share that information. And so again, we do have the website, wsudcompliance.com.au. So anyone looking in this space for WSUD compliance should hopefully come across that website, and that will provide a range of resources and information with time that can help and be beneficial to all the different stakeholders.
Cool. Question or comment from Alan Walker. For the larger councils for personal and funding, it's all good, but for smaller councils, it is a challenge to especially Tassie councils who are often less than 15 to 20,000 person populations. Do you have any comments on that one, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a challenge for the smaller councils to get the funding and the personnel to do this properly. I think in those cases, it might be, with such small populations, it becomes more about planning things better, just thinking about the best way and considering the maintenance and operational side of assets and not just putting them in place to meet a certain target, but thinking about how that council will manage that going forward, because maintenance of these assets and proper management is needed for those targets to be met as the development exists.
Cool. A question from Emad Kavahai. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. From Moreton Bay Regional Council. They say, great initiatives to provide well-informed recommendations for WSUD maintenance budget allocation. It's essential to comprehend the current trends in operation and maintenance spending and to assess how effectively the budget is being utilised. Do you have access to such information and how this compliance committee can play a role in generating and consolidating the required information and data?
Yeah, I think this committee provides a good opportunity to get access to that data. I think it would be good to understand how much councils are putting towards this, how much capacity resourcing they have, and how much they are spending to maintain all of the different types of assets. Because I agree that this is something that's needed. I don't have that information at the moment. I'm not sure if that's really something anyone's got in the industry, but I'm hoping with the framework and this committee, it can provide the opportunity to get this sort of data.
Yeah, cool. Look, it's Ben Peneleric has just put a comment in which knocks the nail on the head. He says, good work on starting this initiative, Daniel. Turning an idea into a reality is never an easy thing. And we're sort of highlighting that there's a whole bunch of questions being thrown at you, and we don't expect you to have all the answers. And that's the idea of getting a collective group of passionate experts and highly experienced practitioners to come together and try their best to help improve the situation. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but I think it's a real positive step in the right direction. Alan Walker, and this is what I was thinking when you're talking about educating developers, nothing's more educational than a development approval condition. Alan Walker says, would approval conditions help? Yeah, absolutely. And this maybe one of the deliverables that come out of this committee is that, some really clear development approval conditions that every council or other councils can at least sort of draw upon to help improve WSUD compliance.
Yeah, because part of the legal material I'd be looking to provide is a suite of conditions of consent. And again, that's going to vary from council to council, but provide that starting point. So I do think this committee, these meetings provide an opportunity to find conditions that would work for across Australia.
A question, a comment from Igmar Zambrano, which is, I think that's the best name we've heard so far, from Ipswich City Council. They say, as it is clear that budget is an issue for all the councils, how does the mock-up system make council compliance more efficient with the current resources? It has been over 5 years for councils and estate governments to educate the industry. However, the compliance has been very low. Who will be responsible for educating the contractors and employees in stormwater management systems during a project/development when it's undertaken? It would be good to find a way to influence the environmental regulation to change the current regulation to become stricter for development, specifically on meeting the pollutants and stormwater maintenance. Do you want to comment on that one? I can help you out if you like, but do you want to have a crack?
I'll talk to it a bit. I think I'll need a bit of your help, but in terms of, I guess the mock-up system and the framework and stuff, it's about providing a starting point in terms of helping with the limited budget. It's rather than being like, oh, you need an asset management system, find your own, do it yourself, all of that. It's about being like, this is a way to do it. It really, to help with that budget and capacity. So I do recognize that for some councils, they still won't have the budget and capacity to do that. However, hopefully, working to get legislation and stuff improved and maybe trying to find some funding opportunities with grants and other opportunities from government and other organizations could help implement this. I think that's kind of my response to that first bit. Who will be responsible for educating contractors and employees in stormwater management systems during a project development is undertaken. I think the idea is looking towards what Blacktown City Council has, which is probably the gold standard for this sort of work, which is having a dedicated WSUD compliance team for this, having 2 WSUD compliance officers dedicated to enforcing legal maintenance requirements on properties, where they can look to provide fact sheets, letters, emails, do meetings, ensure that assets are being maintained. So I think that would be the gold standard. I recognize that might not work for everyone. So I think maybe it becomes a bit of distributing the responsibilities and roles of that program across the organization as required. So have the people imposing conditions of consent, look at educating the developers, having people managing asset management, in maintenance, educate and interact with the maintenance contractors. So I think there is a wide range of how that could look. It will really depend on, again, funding. But I think it would be great to have a dedicated person to this or two, but I recognize that's also not possible for everyone.
Yeah, and you mentioned those educational resources, like clearly there's no need to reinvent the wheel at every council. And I think this is one of the things that'll come out of this group is that, a template around, okay, what does a fact sheet or a guideline or a letter drop look like? And maybe the other councils can basically just use what's already been done as opposed to try and write something themselves. And Ben Penelerick's made another comment. Look, he's very confident that there's it's a challenge, this whole thing, but he's confident there's a way to simplify the process a lot, which would only make it applicable to as wide as audience as possible. And just on the topic of legislation, from my perspective, in many ways the legislation already exists to mandate the maintenance of storm treatment assets. But without enforcement, legislation is nothing more than a suggestion. So I think it's up to regulators, facilitate or at least supported with appropriate education. There is certainly a significant value in appropriate enforcement of existing legislation. There's another question or comment actually from Charlie Caraballo. They say Liverpool City Council would be keen on a maintenance management plan for water treatment devices such as pit inserts to be maintained by the developer, subject to conditions of consent, for a period of time and removed when, say, 80% of dwellings have been constructed. I think that's in relation to erosion sediment control mitigation, so putting in gully baskets to stop sediment going into pits. Charlie says, I have had previous discussions with Harut, and I can see merit on this that doesn't impact on council's resources to maintain. Has there been any other city councils that have adopted this approach? If any councils want to sort of chime in to say whether they've actually done that or not. I can see, Lockie, your hand is up. I suspect you might have some experience in this space. Sorry, Daniel, before Lockie says anything, did you want to comment at all?
No, well, I'll let Lockie have a speak to that, but I think after that we might just move on to the next sections to get things going. Lockie, you can speak.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Wary of taking up the time. If there is someone from a council who wants to talk to it, I'm happy to defer my time, because rather than just hear me talk all the time, or Daniel. If not, I'm happy to talk to experience in that space.
Yeah, talk to it for a little bit, probably.
Yeah, cool. So what you sort of described, and most likely what you've probably already discussed with my colleague Harut, is the program that Blacktown does have in place. Go figure, we're mentioning Blacktown again. But they do have a process in place for temporary pit baskets during subdivisional works prior to the completion of downstream assets. So it protects the public asset from the private development. We have probably, I would say, 15 to 20 of those style of contracts running presently throughout Blacktown City Council of varying lengths, which include the installation, maintenance, and then decommissioning of the inserts, anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 years, depending on the nature of the development. So that is something that definitely does exist. There is experience of it with Blacktown. So it might be, this is the platform, I suppose, where we can hopefully interconnect you guys so that you can make contact and learn from your shared experiences in terms of how that works from a DCP standpoint, and how it can be integrated into how you approach development in your council authority.
Thanks, Lockie. I do see there are a few other questions, but I think I'll answer them at the end of this meeting if people want to stay around for that, just so that people can get going earlier if they need to.
We have put a pin in them, Aaron and Sam, so we'll get to your questions in time. And cool.
Cool, let's keep going. Now, just based off kind of people's experience with today's meeting and just kind of thoughts on committee meetings going forward, I just set up a little poll that's going to appear soon, and just would be interested to hear people's thoughts on, like frequency for this meeting and those sorts of things. So this will appear soon. So in terms of the first one, it will be meeting frequency. I believe that should appear. So I think that should appear on people's screens now. And if people can just kind of respond to that, I can get an understanding of what people think in terms of how regularly these meetings should be. At the moment, bi-monthly seems to be winning quite a bit. Yeah, like it won't be decided today, but I think it would just be good to get people's thoughts. I'll just leave it for a little bit longer to just get any last votes in. But yeah, cool. So I think, yeah, bi-monthly does sound the best. I think monthly is a bit of a commitment. So I'll keep that in mind and I'll go on to the next poll. Share results. I'm not sure if people could see the results before. But yeah, monthly got 4 votes, bi-monthly 27 votes, quarterly 15 votes. So stop sharing. So the next one, I'd also just be interested in understanding the days that people would think better for these meetings going forward. Is Wednesday the best day, or would people prefer Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday? Yeah, Wednesday seems to be the winning day. But just giving opportunity. I think it is a multiple option, so you can vote for multiple days, I believe. But yeah, cool. I will go on to the next one then. Wednesdays do seem to be winning. Share results for people interested. On to the next question. So meeting time. I just kind of thought on the choice of today's meeting, like the time of it. Is afternoon the best? Is morning better? Do people think it was a good choice, bad choice, or in kind of neutral, indifferent about it? If anyone wants to kind of suggest provide any comments on it, you can in the Q&A or the chat, and that just kind of provides some reasoning. But yeah, okay, so people seem to be okay with this. I'll give a few more seconds. But okay, so people seem to be happy. Yep, Alan Walker says morning rather than afternoons, and so yeah, that's fair. I'll keep all of this in mind going forward. Share results, 58% said good choice, 42% said neutral. Next one, meeting duration. I'm just going to be curious to see what people think about 90 minutes. Should it be longer? Should it be shorter? I guess, yeah, like with this being the first meeting, I wasn't too sure how long to make it, so I made it 90 minutes. And some meetings might end up going longer, but we can kind of arrange the agenda in a certain way to make it appropriate for everyone. I'll give it a few more seconds just to get some results. And poll, sharing results. So yeah, most people, 52% seem to be happy with the length of today's meeting. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, so that's helpful, but good to know that people are happy with this. Or some people would prefer a bit shorter, so I'll keep that in mind. In terms of group name, as I talked before, I was interested to hear what people thought this should be called. I went with calling it the National WSUD Compliance Committee just to make the sound a bit more formal. However, it could be called something else. It could just be called a meeting. It could be a group, working group, task force, workshop, committee. We'd just be interested to hear what people have to say, because I understand names can be influential in people signing up. Because if people hear the word committee, they might think, oh, there's too much of a commitment to join. I'll give it a few more seconds just to see if anyone else wants to vote. Okay. Share results. So working group seems to be the winner at 33%, while committee and task force kind of come in second place. Yeah, so I'll keep these in mind, and results from these polls and what I kind of determined from this. I'll probably share in an email to everyone just so they kind of understand what's going to happen going forward. I do see a comment from Nazir, 60-minute meeting with flexibility to longer meetings needed. Yeah, I think that probably makes sense, where have the initial stuff in 60 minutes and then maybe going forward, if people need longer time to talk about things, just put it at the end. So thanks for the comment. So that's the end of the poll. What do I have last? So yeah, we're getting close to the end of this meeting. I'm happy to stay on and talk about questions and comments if anyone has it. But if people want to talk to me after today, you can email me, you can call me, you can connect with me via LinkedIn. Again, you can go to wsudcompliance.com.au. You can scan the QR code and go there. I hope within the week I'll have the recordings from today's meeting there, and further information about the committee and the framework there as more information becomes available. And so also at the end of this meeting, there should be a Zoom survey that pops up, just asking about some feedback from today, just kind of a bit more detailed than the poll we just did, just to kind of find ways to improve compliance or improve this committee going forward. If people have anything they want to say, you can drop it in the Q&A or the webinar chat, and we could maybe talk through it now. If people want to share their audio or comment something, we can do that. Because yeah, I'd be curious to hear what people would be interested in going forward with these meetings. What do you want to see discussed? How do you think things could be improved? Yeah, like how likely are you to attend a committee meeting going forward? So these questions will be sent to you once the meeting ends. However, if anyone wants to provide any comment now, you can.
Cool. And just we've had a couple of comments come through around we don't certainly this task force, is it, working group, doesn't pretend to have a monopoly on knowledge. And so Storming New South Wales, there was a mention from Christy Good, I think, around the Storming New South Wales event that's coming up in relation to financially sustainable options for storm management funding in New South Wales. So there's a link I've just put in the group chat that should take you to that event if you're keen to find out more. There was also a comment from Igmar Zambrano around Water by Design has a bunch of educational material and compliance tools, and I've included a link to that in the group chat as well. I can get back to some of the couple of questions that we missed, if you like, Daniel.
Yeah, like all I have, this is kind of the end of the meeting. Like, I'll just go to the final slide and come back to this. But
okay,
if people need to get going, look, you can reach out to me at any point after today's meeting. I will send a bit of a email later this week about today's meeting. People can contact me via email, phone, or LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm happy to stay on for a while and just talk through other questions that people have or thoughts and ideas. Otherwise, I guess just want to thank everyone that has attended with the questions and participation today. I really appreciate you all coming along, and I really do hope this is something that the industry can get behind and get going, because I do think this will help a lot of people. So thanks for coming along, and we can just stick around and answer the questions people have.
A couple of comments. Michelle Fole also said, Michelle from Derwent Estuary Program in Tassie, that suggested that it'd be great if someone or some people or more than one could have could come to the committee meeting or the next one to talk about positive budgeting experiences for WSUD compliance. It'd be great for them to have a spot at the next meeting. Maybe that's something that maybe Christy Good or someone from Blacktown City Council might be the best place to do.
I can have a chat with Blacktown after this meeting and just kind of see if they would be interested in having a little segment to talk about their experience with this work.
Cool. Just a couple of questions around probably scope of the group. Question from Aaron Wright again. Does this framework only apply to compliance in urban areas? What about rural areas where runoff intensive agriculture is the dominant land use pressure? Farmers and property owners could really benefit from educational impacts to waterways and mitigation and management approaches to reduce risk. Do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, so I think, education engagement material. I think initially my focus would be more urban areas in terms of trying to improve compliance and all of that. However, I do think that the education and engagement material could be applicable to farmers and people in more rural areas, because there's also educational opportunities out there, and stormwater pollution coming from that way as well. So I do think elements of this can be applicable in rural areas. Initially, my focus might be a bit more on urban. However, with feedback from people at these meetings and just in my one-on-ones, it could help shape what I'm doing to make it more applicable to rural areas.
And also there might be some learnings to be gained from rural environments, like, how do councils enforce the appropriate maintenance of septic tanks in rural environments? Maybe that we could apply some of that know-how to the urban sphere. And just a question or a comment from Murray Powell, the legend that is Murray Powell from Optimal Stormwater. Murray says, and this might be the shortest thing I've said, Murray say. I was expecting, he's putting his hand up and we'd have another half hour of Murray waxing lyrical on all things stormwater, but great to have Murray here. Murray says, great initiative, guys. I look forward to assisting with technical input and training potentially in due course. And he says, and eating some plant-based superfoods. Obviously, Murray is jumping on the plant-powered love wagon. And to Aaron's comments, obviously, if we all went plant-based, we'd have a lot less agricultural runoff, recognizing that animal agriculture is the leading cause of ocean dead zones. And in addition to deforestation and biodiversity loss and a leading cause of climate change. But I'm sure everyone knew that already, didn't they? And not that I'm going to jump on my soapbox. Question from Sam Jack. Sam asks, any thoughts on integrating erosion and sediment control into this process? They read a recent study reporting sediment supply during 7 years of a large subdivision construction equated to about 50 years from an operational phase development. Again, it's probably in relation to scope creep, what do you want to focus on? And obviously, you mentioned at the start that it's focusing currently, or at least initially, on the maintenance of water-sensitive urban design assets, whereas longer term, you might look into design, construction, etc.
All those different areas.
Cool. And a comment from Laith Almoil, sorry, Laith. They say, yep, at Blacktown City Council, we have long-term contracts to ensure that developers pay for the long-term maintenance of certain WSUD assets. Cool. That's all I have in the chat. Oh, sorry. I always say that, but then they've just come through. Alan Walker. New South Wales has considerable experience in WSUD and council population, and hence funding much better suited to achieve compliance. Using Blacktown City Council with a population of about 350,000 is great, but we need to fit it to smaller councils. Yep, fair call. Priya Ravikuma says, great session. Looking forward for legislation and maintenance manual for maintaining the WSUD assets. Thanks, Daniel. Cool. That's all I have in the chat. If anyone wants to put any final comments or questions in the Q&A. I guess question, I don't want to put you on the spot, Daniel, is when are you looking to do this next meeting or group get together?
Yeah, like I think my plan is I'm going to have a little bit of a think about this based off the input from today and think about what's possible going forward. I do think bi-monthly is the most likely based off the feedback from today, with my goal maybe being kind of the last Wednesday of each month sort of thing. But again, I'll try to provide some clarity next week to everyone, maybe through an email, just kind of outlining the what's going to happen next. So maybe in October, do another meeting. Yeah,
cool. Awesome. There was something else sorry, Daniel. I guess we had quite a few people saying that they want to be involved in the committee. So is it really just a case of responding to that survey to indicate that they're interested in getting on board?
Yeah, like at the moment, I'm just kind of my main thing is just to bring everyone together. Whether you want to be formally committed or not, that will be up to you and your organization. Like I'm happy for people to just come along, sit back and just listen to what's being said. But if people are interested in becoming maybe a more formal committee member, I'm happy to just kind of have a chat with you outside of these meetings and figure out what that can look like for you, what you're interested in contributing, and how you want to be participating. And yeah, at the moment that hasn't been fully figured out. Today was more just about bringing people together, raising things. Hopefully next meeting I can have a bit more clarity for people on this, on how they can join and get more involved.
And I guess the other point probably is worth making is we had just so many people at this session today. I guess we're quite nervous about how to manage the bandwidth around 150 cameras and audio. So it was a little bit less interactive than probably the next committee meeting. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, like I guess, yeah, it really depends on what people want to see out of these meetings. Next meeting, I think I might, look to get some other people to talk a bit. I might provide a little update on the framework if there's anything to provide an update on. But I'd be really interested in someone else having a bit of a segment to share their projects and works, and maybe not putting Blacktown on the spot, but maybe if they're interested in sharing some of their thoughts and ideas and struggles they're going through, that could be really helpful for the industry. Yeah, so I think at the moment, just due to the number of people that registered for today, we did stick with, no camera, no audio, but it will, maybe with time, things will get a bit smaller, or there can be subcommittees or subgroups or whatever you want to call them, where it can be a bit more discussion based, where people can see each other and engage in a bit more audio based form.
Cool. That's it. That's all for me. Daniel, I'm not sure if you want to wrap up or up to you.
No, I think that's everything then. The comments.
Oh, sorry. A couple of comments. Ashley Jarvis, thanks guys. Good challenge ahead of you, but has a fantastic outcome. Thanks, folks. Thanks, guys. Lots of thank yous, which is lovely. Great session. Well done. Thanks all from Kate Murphy. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, folks, from Michelle, etc. Blah, blah,
blah. Yeah, I guess that's end of today's meeting. Again, just want to thank everyone for attending. If I didn't get around to answering your question in detail, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a chat outside of this meeting about things. I look forward to seeing what we can do as a group going forward, and look forward to seeing you next meeting or at another event going forward. Thanks, everyone.